let me ask you, Caleb Calhoun, where the Tennessee-Kentucky basketball rivalry ranks among the top rivalries that Tennessee has. So we could go back to Tennessee UConn in the Lady Vols, but I feel like that's kind of dated. So let's go more along the lines of football. So where does this Tennessee-Kentucky basketball rivalry rank compared to football rivalries? And it'll be today's tough question. It's brought to you by our good friend Rick Terry of Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Where does this rivalry rank? Caleb Calhoun, what say you?
You guys ready? Do y'all have seatbelts?
I'm ready, and I don't have a seatbelt, but I've got a sore back, so I'm sitting up extra straight.
Tennessee-Kentucky rivalry is a one-sided rivalry that only Tennessee fans care about, the same way Tennessee-Kentucky football is a one-sided rivalry that only Kentucky fans care about. It's not a real rivalry. Kentucky is the most storied program.
Not true.
Hold on. I'm just going to say it. Kentucky is the most storied program in all of college basketball history. Tennessee doesn't have a Final Four. Yes, will it mean something to sweep Kentucky this year? Absolutely, you can celebrate it. But in the grand macro scheme of things, I'm sorry, they are massively different levels. Kentucky basketball does not think about Tennessee.
Okay. But that would be like asking from Kentucky or South Carolina's perspective what they think of Tennessee as a rival. So I understand your point, but that's kind of mute.
You gotta go
as they like to say at Halls. But what I want to ask you, though, is from Tennessee's perspective, where does it rank? Is it Kentucky hoops? Is it UConn ladies? Is it Tennessee, Alabama football? Where do you rank it?
I rank it significantly below UConn women's and Tennessee, Alabama football, because Tennessee's been competitive with Alabama in football, and there have been championship implications, with women's basketball. And I rank Tennessee, Florida ahead of Kentucky in basketball because, again, for Tennessee, historically, beating Kentucky was just, wow, you beat Kentucky. That's amazing. You beat a great team. Didn't necessarily mean you were a great team. It just meant you beat a great team. Tennessee, I will call this a real rivalry when Tennessee makes a Final Four. Hasn't happened yet. Okay, so I will sit there and say, yes, Tennessee. So I can't sit there and put it on the Alabama level, where in football, historically, Tennessee, Alabama, how many of those games have determined the SEC champion? So many of them. By the way, another one, Tennessee, Auburn in football back in the day, I would have ranked ahead of Tennessee, Kentucky. That Tennessee, Auburn series, Dave, you remember it. A lot of our younger viewers don't remember it. How many years did that game determine the SEC champion? Up until the 90s.
I'm going to play a fun little agree-disagree game. Kalen says it's not a rivalry. We haven't been big in basketball, but they've been relevant, and can you look up the history the past 10 years, or actually Bruce Pearl's first year? What was Bruce Pearl's first year?
2005, 2006.
Okay. Can you give me the Tennessee-Kentucky series since 2005, 2006? It's like beating them in football. I think Kalen is referring to Kentucky like beating Tennessee would be in basketball. Now, Travis says disagree. Last 20 years are relevant. I totally agree with Travis on that. Hit the like and subscribe button, please. Let's bring more people into the program. And I'm curious, I see Caleb doing the math. What is Tennessee's record against Kentucky since 2014 when Bruce Pearl was hired?
2005, you mean? 11.
2005.
Hold on, I'm counting it in my head. 1 second.
Okay, he's counting his head, so I'm going to be quiet here, and I'm going to look on the message board for some good input and interaction because Caleb has personally just said, I got to do math.
Yeah,
Jan says, hold on. Jan says to this 65-year-old ball fan, it's a big deal. I think it should be a big deal when you play Kentucky across the board. All right, Caleb, thoughts?
Even since Bruce Pearl was hired at Tennessee, which was 2005, the Vols are 16-25. Which is still a significant losing record. And by the way, Tennessee has never won more.
Wait. You told me yesterday that if Tennessee wins 2 or 3 against Georgia, that's good in football.
2 of 5, actually, is what I said.
2 of 5. Sorry. 2 of 5. You're right. If Georgia wins 2 or 3, basically is how I remembered it. You don't have to have a significant rival and beat them 50% of the time. It doesn't always have to be 50%.
We are talking about a period going back to when Bruce Pearl was hired, though. Tennessee is 16-25, and that we're in the midst of arguably watching the greatest 20-year stretch in Tennessee basketball history, and potentially the worst 20-year stretch in Kentucky basketball history. So
Dylan, who's a younger guy, I think by his picture, he looks just like my best friend. So I always see it when he posts. He says, I just don't, it's like if Cindy Crawford were to post, it just like gets my attention. I just don't think the UT-UK rivalry means as much today as it used to. Okay, if that's the case, is it Kentucky's fault? Because John Calipari has made a bunch of billionaires. He likes to brag about that, but they haven't won championships. They also haven't at times played particularly well against Tennessee and Rick Barnes. What's Rick Barnes's record against Kentucky?
I'm going to be fair to you guys. Rick Barnes is 11-9 against Kentucky now, which is really good since he's at Tennessee.
Dylan says he's 22. Dylan, man, I'm telling you, buddy, I'll be 50 next week. God forbid. And it's a big deal. Like when Caleb asked me the other day, because I went on a date night to the Auburn game. Thank you for Banks and Jones, T. Scott Jones, for taking care of me there. Enjoyed hanging out with his future son-in-law and wife. That was a lot of fun. They are your one call for criminal defense and personal injury. But Caleb asked me the next day, he said, was that the loudest Thompson Bowling's ever been? And I'm like, man, they had the Kentucky game. Didn't they used to have it on a Sunday before Selection Sunday? I could have that wrong. But anyway, Saturday or not, I can remember times in midseason too where it was really, really loud. Kentucky's Kentucky to me. Like Alabama, for instance, if they fall off the map, that's still a huge, monstrous rivalry.
What made Alabama a rivalry? Now, it's funny Dylan says this because it's more of a rivalry since Dylan's been following Tennessee than it ever was in the past, because Tennessee, unlike, Dylan, it's rare, but you're watching a time where Tennessee's actually been competitive with Kentucky. Throughout most of history, Dave, it's safe to say Tennessee's not been competitive with Kentucky.
Damn, right? Dylan's 22 years old. I'd rule the world if I were 22 years old right now. Sorry, go ahead.
It's fair to say, Dave, throughout most of history, Tennessee has been as competitive with Kentucky in basketball as Kentucky has been with them in football.
Yeah, that's fair. So I don't. Okay,
here's why it's when we talk about rivalries. The reason Alabama what made the Alabama game a rivalry? It started when General Neyland and Wallace Wade agreed to play each other finally annually starting in 1927, and there were championship implications throughout the first 30 years of them playing each other. That's how it exploded. Tennessee, Florida, what made it a rivalry? The winner effectively won the SEC championship, or the East at least, for the first 10 years of existence when the division split. There were meaningful implications. Where has been the meaningful implication for Tennessee and Kentucky? Tennessee's never actually played for anything of relevance in basketball.
You could still have a rivalry.
You got to somewhat be on it is a recent rivalry, and I will acknowledge that, but I can't sit there and say like it means that much historically. It's not like Tennessee's going to ever even the series with Kentucky in basketball as long as we're alive. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah, that's very fair to say. But for a long time, Tennessee was number 2 in hoops wins and football wins to Kentucky and Alabama, respectively. So that was something. I wrote a column this morning that is on offthehooksports.com. And let's talk about expansion for a second, because if I'm Greg Sankey, I feel like I'm pretty good at football. I'm going all after Duke and North Carolina to make the SEC a basketball conference as well. So I think Tennessee, Kentucky means something because there are a lot of Tennessee basketball fans. That's shown in our analytics, by the way. And I think there are plenty of Kentucky fans, obviously, plenty of Duke, North Carolina. You could make the SEC the ultimate basketball conference and the ultimate football conference, the two revenue-making sports, boom, bango, just by getting Duke and North Carolina. Now, Caleb, don't slow this down with the ACC has that terrible contract. I know that, and you'd have to overcome that. But what do you think of just purely the concept of it?
It depends on how many teams the ACC wants, or the SEC wants, excuse me.
No. This is Caitlin says my son's birthday. Somebody else's birthday is on the 12th. Mine's the 13th, 50 years old. But Caleb, I'm not taking anybody else. I'm just taking.
No, I disagree. I would take Florida State and Virginia Tech over Duke tomorrow. I wouldn't even think about it. I'd take Virginia over Duke. I'd take Virginia over North Carolina. And so my top team that I would take from that's not in the SEC right now is Virginia. And you guys can laugh at that. Look at the revenue they're producing. They're actually filling the stands. They actually have a low-key, underrated, sleeping giant of an athletic program. And they've already won a national title in basketball. I'm taking Virginia. Then I'm taking Florida State. Then I'm taking Clemson. No. Those are my top three. No. And
I'm building basketball. Because I got enough hoops. I mean, I got enough football. I
don't care about the quality. I care about the revenue.
Okay, fair enough. Where does Kentucky...
But football revenue dwarfs basketball revenue.
Pardon the slight typo. Where does Kentucky basketball rivalry rank? That's on our YouTube page. Please vote right there, right now. Okay, so Dylan again is 22. I think we're going to ask Dylan for a social security number here in a second.
It's been a lot, but I'm feeling 22.
It's been kind of a Dylan sort of segment for some reason. But nobody else is talking Dylan right now on talk radio. I can promise you that. But where does Kentucky basketball rivalry rank? Does this surprise you, Dylan and Caleb? Alabama football is 62% of the vote. They lead. Number 2, Kentucky hoops, 25% of the vote. UConn women's hoops is 6% of the vote. Georgia football is also 6% of the vote. So there you go. I think Dave's on to something here.
That's because so many Tennessee basketball fans.
Let me finish. Okay. This rivalry touches the soul of a Tennessee fan almost as much as an Alabama fan. It's still that big of a
It's a one-sided rivalry. It is the same way. And Dave, you just brought up UNC and Duke. You brought up UNC and Duke. It's funny you say that because outside of UNC, every team in the ACC considers Duke a rival. Duke does not consider anybody else a rival, though. Okay, Kentucky doesn't care about Tennessee. Kentucky has bigger fish to fry.
Okay, but can I get a quick timeout? I don't think that's true. Derek says, I mean, who else is Kentucky's rival other than Tennessee? Who is it? Louisville, right?
Louisville and Indiana.
Oh, come on.
No, Kentucky, Indiana is a big rivalry.
No, I understand that, but let's be real here for a second. I mean, they care.
I think they care about Indiana more than Tennessee.
They don't play Indiana every year, do they?
They used to. I don't know if they still do, but they used to. That was a big thing. I think that they really care about Indiana.
So we're going to differ on that. I think year in and year out, because it's a conference game, they'd rather beat Tennessee than beat Indiana.